Welcome to the Locker Room Podcast, Daily Sports Science. Very fortunate tonight to have Robbie Brennan, All-Ireland winning manager with Kilmacud, current Kilmacud manager as well. Mark Doran, Slough manager, Wicklow coach, and Daniel St. Ledger again, who's been on this last few weeks. Daniel, lads, great to have you on here, lads. Thanks very much for your time. Great to see you all. I suppose, man, we kick off. Robbie, we'll put you in the hot seat straight away. Your first night on, we'll give you the golden ticket here. Dublin, Robbie, a county obviously you're very, very familiar with, having coached there. 2 from 2, obviously 2 defeats from 2, albeit at the narrowest margin on both nights. I was looking at the final whistle, Robbie. I just seen Desi's face, and I think that the ref blew, I think it was Fergal, he blew the whistle right on 4 minutes. Brent Fenton was on the attack, and he was probably thinking to himself, we'll take a draw here, because a draw at one point in a 2-point league is actually not a bad result away from home. So, would you be concerned, Robbie, about Dublin, or do you think it's just a bit of shadow boxing from the early days?
I think probably a bit of shadow boxing. All right, I think they're probably further on than maybe they're letting on at the minute. I think they were close enough the other night. A couple of soft decisions I think went against them, in particular. A couple of handy frees that Mayo picked up. So, and Monaghan looked very fresh and lively, obviously day one, but I still think Dublin are just tipping away in the background. I don't think Desi be too concerned at the minute. And yeah, I'd agree with you. I saw his face, and I think he was definitely thinking there was another player or two left in it. So but it's early days. Look, they've been here before. They've obviously been gone down to Division 2 and back up. They'll not be too concerned at this stage, I don't think.
Yeah, and I don't think, obviously Leinster Championship is defunct in their eyes. It's something that they'll stumble through, and obviously they'll condition and peak for obviously later in the year. Daniel, you've sort of said this before as well, haven't you? It's just about championship for those teams, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I think so. And like, in fairness, the league is more competitive for Dublin than Leinster will be. So maybe there might be some merit in kind of getting what you can out of these games, and kind of you're getting a good eye at what you're going to be facing later down the road. Like, there's a few little bits I just looked at with Dublin, and kind of in contrast with Mayo, I thought Dublin's forward play in the first 20 minutes was fantastic. Like, obviously they got a bit of a kick in the hole after the Monaghan game and decided, right, we're going to be a bit more patient. We're going to limit the turnovers and kind of keep the score relatively tight, because I thought they picked Mayo apart. I thought their forward play was really good in the first half. Like, you could see them setting up little bunch and breaks in the 45 and another one inside closer to goal. Like, really organised, really structured. No, maybe there comes a point where you over-organise or over-structure forward play. Sometimes you just have to let lads at it. But I thought they picked Mayo apart. And then on the other foot, I thought Mayo's forward play was absolutely criminal. Like, it was really, really poor. And I think the only way Mayo will win in All-Ireland is if they can, every play starts with a kick out for the opposition. That's the only time they got any kind of foothold in the game, was when it was a wild manic press when Dublin were unstructured. Because I think in the first half, I was looking at a few stats online, they had 6 kick passes into the full forward line with 1 positive return from it. Like, I mean, that's really poor. They had like a rugby league line around Dublin's middle third press and no real clue how to break it down. So look, you're getting little snippets here and there, but as I said, it's probably not. I'd say Dublin won't be too concerned as of yet. Like, you're still missing a huge spine of the team,
Yeah, and just to touch on what Daniel said there, Mark, like, obviously Mayo, I was in Derry on Saturday night, and you can definitely see that Kieran Mina is obviously trying to bring some structure to the down attack, because down obviously were very sporadic last year, relying on goals and sort of playing what you would probably call a lot of off the cuff football. But you can see a wee bit of structure, like yourself, Mark, you're coaching it yourself. Like, it's so important now to have a form of an offensive structure. Now, every play doesn't have to be structured, but certainly when you come up against teams that are sitting in deep, or teams that have a really, really well organized defensive platform, you need a plan B.
Yeah, look, you probably need a plan B and a C and a D. Look, everybody knows ideally if you sit well low block defence and you can turn the ball over, you would do all this in like 10 seconds, get a shot away, but that doesn't always happen. And you probably need your plan B then. And look, you mentioned Kieran Mina and narrow down. You do see when teams do sit with 14 back in, obviously the goalkeeper down, do push everybody inside. Look, there's no saying 14 can't defend 15, and you can see what Down's trying to do with the goalkeeper. And look, they're probably in the early stages been a mini Derry. Now, the thing, I know we're talking about Dublin Mayo, but the one thing I've been really impressed with Mickey Hart and the horse, they haven't come in and changed a big lot with Derry. They've let Derry play the way they've been playing under Rory, and maybe just added a few wee bit more partners. But look, you mentioned that they're like the plan B, C, and D, and the top teams do have 4 or 5 plans. And look, funny enough, I just watched a Dublin game on Saturday night. Look, I actually thought Dublin were really, really good. And Craig McEnany actually impressed me at 6. Now, I do think Mayo, Stephen Cohen getting the goal sort of brought Mayo back into it, but I know Desi Farr's face is a wee bit annoyed, but I think when he goes away and thinks about it, he'll be happy enough.
Yeah, and Robbie, structured attacks obviously something that I feel the club game has obviously evolved massively as well. You know, you're obviously involved with Kilmacud now for a long number of years, and come up against a Glen team, Robbie, who I would probably say, you know, from an attacking point of view, they ask you so many questions, you know, and you can see that in Derry's play. And like, how important, Robbie, do you feel, you know, that this has become? How prevalent this become in modern day coaching, in your opinion?
It's huge. It's huge, Stevie. It's. I think even at Glen, you can see the way that they would have worked hugely with Bradley and goals to, you know, coming out and giving them that extra, as Mark says, you know, 15 can't go 14, 16 v 15 is a plus as well. And you know, I'm watching some of the Division 3, some of the Division 4 games, and even some stuff in Division 2, and you can clearly see the teams that are unable to break down some of these packed defences, and I would say it's just not being coached by the looks of it. Whereas, you know, probably the top end of the club game, and certainly obviously up the ranks in the leagues, you're seeing it. But like, if you don't have it, you're just not going to get through. That's the bottom line, you know. And we would have found that Glen defence very tough to break down, and then obviously they were countering us at huge pace and cut us opens at times, but very, very structured. And I agree with Mark. You know, a lot of this is coming from Gallagher's work with Derry that he would have put in originally, you know, with Pods on left and, you know, filling that full forward line. And obviously everybody's copying it now and trying to improve on it. And there are layers to be added to it, but you can see it certainly with what Derry are doing.
Yeah, it's probably not easy, coach Daniel. Like, but you sort of probably have to ask as well. You know, Mayo do have good coaches. You know, Mayo have Tony Buckley. You know, Stephen Rochford. You know, obviously Kevin might want to do a bit of the coaching himself or whatever. But there was an interesting, you know, when Naomi McHale, the brother-in-law, stepped away, there was an interesting sort of message came out that there was a bit of conflict and interest, and it's so important, I suppose, Daniel, from a coaching perspective, that everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet as well, isn't it? Like.
Yeah, like there's a few bits I wouldn't be sure. Like, I think Tony Buckley's a renowned sort of defensive coach, and one-on-one tackling coach would be kind of forte, and he's extremely good at that. And you can see that kind of with all of his Mayo teams, extremely good in the tackle. And especially defenders, we talked about it last week, about cornerbacks, fullbacks, defending on an island, not with numbers. Like, Mayo are always particularly good at that. But I would wonder, like, I really wonder about the use of Aidan O'Shea. I mean, so some of the ball going into him on the weekend where it's almost playing the same ball into Ryan O'Donoghue as it's going into Aidan O'Shea. Now, that doesn't really work for me. Like, I mean, you've got a 6'5" monster who's trying to play ground ball out in front, and Theo Clancy, I thought your man Robbie did really well in him. Anything on the floor, I thought he was excellent on him. But like, the two opportunities Mayo had for goal were actual drop shots, you know, and we're seeing these goals more and more consistently, where players are shooting slightly outside the cordon and keepers are stuck in their line. Defenders don't know whether to come and go, and you're getting little tap-ins. Like, there should have been one in the first half, and Cohen's goal was a perfect example of it as well. That was the only time that Mayo looked like they had any kind of real intent for a goal. Like, other than that, I mean, I'd be using Aidan O'Shea as almost a decoy sometimes, because Dublin were dropping a sweeper fairly regularly in front of them, and Mayo were just trying to tread little balls between them. As far as I'm concerned, we're talking about overloads and kind of numbers. They should be kind of flooding runners through that 45. If Dublin have dropped off, there should be numbers somewhere. Like, and I think in the first half especially, you could see just Mayo lining up with 5-6 players across the middle of the field, kind of just laterally passing, never really challenging that middle third block of Dublin. And in the second half, you could see them kind of a small bit more getting runners into the far 45, and several times we saw Cormac Costello the odd time, Basquel ending up in their full back line, which is sort of the way Dublin are defending at the moment. You're tracking a man and you're going with that man the whole way. Now, from Dublin's point of view, I wouldn't be overjoyed with having those three lads kind of being my last line of attack. You know, I think you're wasting their qualities, but it maybe a little bit of learning from Mayo at half time kind of helped them a small bit. But for the most part, there doesn't seem to be anything overly structured, where when you look at Dublin's forward play, as I've alluded to, you can see a plan. And I think, yes, we don't want to overcoach or anything like that, but when you're facing 12, 13 men, you need to have something, because individuals can be snuffed out, you know?
Yeah, and Mark, for me, obviously Killian O'Connor was a fantastic forward, and probably his better days or maybe behind him. You know, Ryan O'Donoghue is a really, really good forward, but our Mayo missing that real outstanding marquee forward, you know, like AKA a Shane McGuigan, a Shane Walsh, a Clifford, a Con, you know, someone who's just really a match winner, Mark, as you would probably call it. Are they missing that real marquee man up there?
Yeah, but say you're right.
To challenge for an All-Ireland, like, to challenge.
Yes, the real. And look, to be fair, look, it probably is something being labelled against them. And they are missing a Shane McGuigan, a David Clifford, or a Con, or it's just, or a young Conor McManus. There probably are. It's the one player they're short. Looking at, I think we've had this conversation before. The most important player in the field, in my eyes, is still the man that's going to get you 1-6, 1-7. I know people said about the goalkeeper, but look, Robbie probably know this. He's probably two of the best forwards in Ireland and his club team, like with Paul Mannion or Shane Walsh. Even if Mayo had one of them, I just, like, to be fair, Ryan O'Donoghue was absolutely brilliant on Saturday night. I don't know how they get man of the match. I thought he was outstanding. Even if you think the winning point, like a lot of people, Dublin were sitting thinking he's going to have a shot here, but instead quick free and over the bar. But look, it's one thing Dublin probably are missing is that Mayo, that one marquee forward. Yes, Ryan O'Donoghue, I think, scored 8 points, but I think 6 of them are frees. But there's just the one boy that can go in and maybe take 1-5, 1-6, a real marquee forward.
Yeah. Robbie, Mickey Hart, 6 from 6. Sean Kavanagh doesn't think they're going that well, but that's a big statement from Mickey. And I think, Robbie, I got a phone call just before Christmas from Niall Gartland in the Gaelic Life, and he wanted to sort of get my opinion on how I felt Hart would go with Derry and McGuinness would go with Donegal. And I actually felt there'd be an enormous amount of pressure, Mickey, for a number of obvious reasons. The way he left Louth, and obviously as well, Tyrone absolutely despised Derry and vice versa. And the in-laws obviously from Tyrone, and I know very well what the rivalry is like and how bitter and how resentful it is. So Mickey going to Derry was obviously a huge thing. Now Mickey obviously plays it down, keeps asking the same question, but that there's no substitute, Robbie, for winning. Like, and once he has those wins under the belt, like, there's an awful lot of pressure now can be eased off him. Is that would you agree?
I think so. Look, it was. I don't think anybody really believed when it came out that he had gone there, but I can see why. They're that far down the road. They're not too far off, probably contending for an All-Ireland. I'm not so sure whether they're actually quite good enough. They're not far off full pelts for the 2 opening games of the league, and okay, they look good coming towards the latter stages the other day. Just not so sure when it really gets down the stretch whether they're just going to have enough to just get over the line. But he certainly has, and I'd agree with the earlier comments, I don't think they've changed a whole lot. They probably just added that extra little bit that was missing. I know obviously Mina came in, but post Gallagher, but look, for Mickey, he doesn't go anywhere. He obviously improved Louth when he went there. He's going to improve Derry, even if it's a small percentage, but I just still have a feeling they might be just a little bit short come the real business end.
Yeah, and Daniel, when I was watching the game on Sunday, like, I really had a feeling, for me, obviously the first half, there was a gale force wind blowing down the field, and Derry only went in 3 points up at halftime. There was probably an element of, it's a 4 or 5 point lead, but I actually always felt the way Derry played, Daniel, the way they're organised, playing against the Breeze was actually going to suit them. The possession type game they like to play, and they actually created a lot of real good goal chances the second half. The one they actually got was probably quite fortunate, but they did create some real good openings against Tyrone. But how do you feel they're going, Daniel? And do you see, Mark talked about, a lot of similarities from last year. Mickey will obviously add experience in the changing rooms and know-how and tactical nous, but what do you see, or what do you think Derry need to do differently to really bridge that gap?
Yeah, I would be saying they're fairly close to where they are at the moment. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I think they're probably doing extremely well to be at the level they're at, considering probably the depth pool they have. Like, I don't see a whole lot of changes. I'd say Derry's best hope of getting to an All-Ireland final, let's say, would be other teams regressing rather than them actually adding a whole lot more to what they have. Like, I think they're maximising every resource they have. I genuinely do. I think they're like an extremely proficient team, but even last year it was the same crew for the league, same crew for championship, working off a small panel. It looks to be something kind of, they're going to go along similar lines again this year. Cormac Murphy is a really good find. He's a lovely footballer. I think he'll probably add a little bit to them, but I think it's more than likely you'd be hoping maybe Dublin Kerry come back a notch or two rather than Derry actually doing anything more than what they have. Like, and as regards to you asked a question about their play against them, I thought their close skills are so good in tight areas. Like, they're working it through the hands and being able to create little 2-on-1s, 3v2s in really tight areas. I thought was absolutely, like, was top class in the second half. And you're seeing a kind of a trend, I know, with Sylvester's as well. We're better against the wind sometimes because there's more of an instinct that, right, you have to run the ball, you have to get runners through the middle third, you can't sit back and put a 60-yard kick pass into a forward and let him do the business. You know, it encourages runners, and I think we'd all admit runners are hard to defend, and runners at pace are really hard to defend. So yeah, I think Tyrone were Tyrone had a good few newcomers. I thought probably not in a bit of transition where they're at, I'm not so sure. So like the first 2 wins, I wouldn't be wild about them. Like we saw, obviously Kerry are going fairly all right, like and put a nice score against Monaghan, but yeah, it's interesting. Like it definitely could backfire. Like if you have the same 20 players that are playing, a lot of them coming from Glen, playing 7-8 league games, whatever it is, and then straight into championship, and the attrition of Ulster is ferocious. Like if, just for example, if Derry were in Munster or Leinster and were guaranteed practically a provincial final, and then they could start to rev it up again for their All-Ireland series, different story. But going from the league to the attrition of Ulster is a huge ask from the same group of lads, you know.
Mark, what club's Cormac Murphy? You've been involved.
Marfelt.
Yeah, he's a good footballer, and he'll obviously. I actually think that is something they need to do, is sort of add a wee bit of strength and depth to their squad. You know, if they are missing 2 or 3 key players, Cormac Murphy's obviously a great addition. Now, tell me this: Lachlan Murray was on the scene, and he doesn't seem to be. He doesn't seem to be. Is he injured or?
No, he's not injured, but he's just Cormac Murphy has seemed to overtake him at the minute now. Laura, he was actually on the panel.
Lachlan was a great white hope there. Like, you know, he was left out of the under-20 final last year. There was big talk of him obviously coming through at senior level last year, but probably just didn't really kick on, did he?
No, he didn't. But he looked, to be fair, he was like, there's no doubt Rory Gallagher really rated Lachlan. But to be fair, look, again, a different manager coming in, and I know throughout the Derry Championship, I went to all the games, and to be fair, Mickey Hart and Horse were both at it. But Cormac Murphy was by far one of the most impressive forwards in the Derry Club Championship. There, like we played Slotneil, played Maherfelt in a group game, like, and he gave us serious. We actually had to put Chrissy on near the end. He gave us serious problem. That was the first time I really seen him. I remember working with Paddy Talley, and Paddy, he went to St Mary's. Paddy said to me, "Why coming, Cormac Murphy, watch out from Derry." And this was like 2 or 3 years ago. Paddy had said, "If we were following St Mary's, and tell you what, he can be as good as whatever he wants to be." Now, I didn't really hear of him then, and it was just last year, being in Derry, he was really, really good. Now, to be fair, I'd actually say Mickey Hart and Horse have actually added. Derry's probably a stronger panel now than they had last year. If you look through Derry, I think they used 19 players through the whole league. Like, that's small. Like, the one thing, and that would have been one criticism. People in Derry would have had a Rory, maybe that he just had 18, 19 players, and they were the boys. Nobody else could game time. Whereas, if you look now, look, Dermot Barker, who's played for Steelstown, he's played every Buchanan Cup game. He's played the 2 league games. He's played really, really well. Emmett Bradley's come back into the fold, which will be a big help. I think actually Ewan Mulholland's now in the squad too, even though he got hurt in the Ireland Club final. They've actually ended up obviously Cormac Murphy at it. So look, I know they've lost Paddy Cassidy from Slotneil has left. I know they've done everything to try to keep him, but look, I actually think they've found 4 or 5 more players, and that'll be a big thing. But look, at the end of the day, yes, they are going very, very well, very early. But I know I will say the same. I remember playing them last year when I was involved with Clare, and they were absolutely flying in the league. And I was sitting going to myself, no way will they keep that going.
And they did.
And they did. And yeah, like we're talking about tactics. And I remember that day we played Clare. Sorry, they obviously worked like Derry. When you're playing against Derry, you'll see 3 or 4 different, like in defence. They'll either go man to man, or they'll go a low block, and they'll go narrow. Now, obviously, again, Clare they decided to go narrow, and it was just protect. But yet, there was a fellow, Emmett McNahan, kicked 2 or 3 points from around near the sideline, just on a lucky. Next thing you could hear Gallagher on the line, right, go wide, low block. They've just of all these, like tactically, they were so good. But looking back, the thing was, they were flying last year, and they were probably should have made an All-Ireland final. So look. At the minute, Derry they're probably the one county that is just buzzing. Like, I was up there last Monday night, and the place is buzzing. And like, even I just remember we were talking there about Mickey Hart had been announced, Mickey Hart in the Derry, and I'll never forget it. Slotneil, it was a 4-week Slotneil were playing. I actually think Slotneil were playing in the semi-final championship, and we had a meeting on the Monday night before, and the news broke. And I remember just talking to the boys, and next thing, there's no word of lie, you're talking. Next thing, phone was just pinging, but about 10 different people's phones were all pinged at the same time. And I said to the boys, you have a new manager, and see Shane McGuigan, Brennan, Chrissy, you swear somebody gave them £1 million. They were delighted.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been the same though if Daniel St. Ledger had been announced, but I'd be like, oh, we're back to park the bus now by 15 men the ball. But
Come here, who did you say was getting £1 million? Mickey?
I don't know. You're saying that.
Tell me this, Robbie. The team that denied Derry last year, a place in the final, Kerry. Obviously lost the first game to Derry, and I would say that there was a bit of pride hurting there from Jack, and obviously leaving the two Cliffords out. I personally feel, Robbie, now I could be completely wrong here, but I just think if you do take the two Cliffords out of Kerry, like all of a sudden they do become very ordinary and come right back to the pack, like, because they're the stardust. And it was no coincidence, Robbie, that I wouldn't say the panic button, but certainly the button was pressed on Sunday, get them back and let's get 2 points on the board,
Probably, I don't think they were due to be in that early, were they? They were due another round of league off, I think. But yeah, possibly the panic button pressed a little bit. But again, I'd say Kerry just a little bit further on than maybe even the results are showing. I think obviously the two lads are, they completely transformed their forward line. Shawnee O'Shea looks sharp. He looks narky. He's right in it at the minute. So
yeah.
I'd say obviously they have a point to prove of after last year, and I'd say a good league is something they're targeting. Obviously, given the Munster Championship is what it is, no disrespect to Cork or anybody else in it, but they'll obviously walk that. So I think they need a good league run. I suspect they'll be up thereabouts at the top of it by the end of the league. Yeah.
And Daniel, like, I know Jack's not a new manager, but like, how important is it for a new management team to come in and really get that? Like, I think it's become so prevalent, even Daniel at club level now. Like, you can't. It's not that you can't have an off season, but you can't rest on your laurels. Like, you have to be your S&C. You have to be trying to develop your speed. You have to be at something now.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, look, it's pretty much club stuff is pretty much year round, and especially with counties that have kind of relatively structured club leagues, like you're pretty much having to copy the county team. So it's not about getting bigger and all the rest of it. It's more so injury prevention. Like it's nutritional year. Like you look at the boys there at the moment that they're going to have 7 league games. Some of them will get a week or two off. If you're from Kerry, you'll probably get ran for 4 weeks before your first round of championship. But and then you're stuck into it, and once August is done, or once July is done, you're back into your club season. So like you have to have a huge body of work under your belt, and you hear in the Sunday game a bit of a narrative that teams are only getting stuck into their work now. It just doesn't happen like that. You can't play games on a Sunday, get the shidering out on a Tuesday and Thursday, and go play another game. It doesn't really go like that. You have to have a good block done pre-league, and it's like I think the league is a huge thing for especially teams like Kerry, because they probably won't get an overly competitive game for a while. Like, and again, no disrespect to any of the other counties, but that's the reality. And if Kerry aren't battle hardened come a quarter final, you could get cottoned hot very quickly. Like you look at a team coming out of Ulster or even Connacht, which has improved significantly. Like they will be battle hardened and calloused, and you could get caught in the off day, But it's yeah, again, you can't read too much into these games. You can only analyse what you're seeing in front of you. But I thought Kerry were decent against Derry, all things considered, without the two boys. As we said on the podcast last week, the two lads are worth about 7 or 8 points between them minimum, and that's kind of the way it turned out against Monaghan. And we talked about Monaghan as well. How would it suit being back in Clonus and a bit of a slog of a pitch? Well, it kind of turned out that way. The lightning quick sort of transitions they had against Dublin weren't quite there. So it's hard. It's really hard to know where teams are at. Like, I mean, probably Derry are the only ones that are really showing any major hands at the moment.
Yeah, and Mark, obviously, from Daniel's chat there, we talked about Connacht, like Roscommon and Galway, 2 teams struggling in the first in the opening week. Both probably needed or had targeted this as certainly a game that they both could and should have won. Like, but it finished 9-9. The surprise factor for Roscommon has gone probably a wee bit, Mark, from last year. They came in, obviously McHugh was with Davy. A lot of work had been done pre-season. It was well documented, the hard running they were doing. They came in very, very fit. They got a real good start to the league. Enda Smith was brought back this week. They've lost Cian McKeown travelling. Kieran Murder stepped away from the panel. It's going to be a big 2 weeks now for Roscommon, Mark. Like, where can you see them getting enough points to stay in the league?
I think it's going to come down to Roscommon. When Roscommon play Dublin, and probably, it depends what way the Dubs are. If they're fall out, they'll not be anywhere near the Dubs, but maybe it will come down to Roscommon's game again, Monaghan. I would say it was a big, big loss. Roscommon losing to Tyrone, because look, yourself, it wasn't a strong Tyrone team in paper, and I actually thought Roscommon would have beat them. Now, to be fair, I was watching the Sunday game last night, or Sunday Sport. You got the impression Davy Burke and Pádraig Joyce were both delighted with a point. So I got the impression, just was actually listening to the two of them on the radio on the way up the road, and you got the impression it was nearly a relief. Both men were off with a point. Like, but I know Lar Wall's actually in Roscommon now at the minute, isn't he? Lar used to be with it. Yep. So look, to be fair to Davy Burke, he's done that, but I know you would know probably better than this year. Roscommon did hit the ground last year flying. So where he's done it on purpose, maybe they haven't went as hard this year, or I don't know. But like when you look at Roscommon, even you've mentioned boys are missing, but when you look at their team, they have serious quality.
Yeah.
Like they have serious quality. But then on the flip side, you look at the Galway team, yes, he's still missing a lot of players. Yeah, and I was listening to John Divley there last week or 2 weeks, and he says, look, yes, the league, it's very important. We're trying to get 5 or 6 points as quick as possible. But he says, look, make no mistake, it's championship or burst this year. So look, Galway aren't afraid to say that. So look, but I would say both teams were glad with the point. But look, Roscommon, I think it will come down to Roscommon and Monaghan again, each other, big game. And look, I still think maybe it could be them too, even though Monaghan got the result. Yeah. Again, Dublin, like when you look at Monaghan, they are down serious bodies, and look, probably Monaghan never write them off because they just pull results nowhere. But when you look at Roscommon, it's that Roscommon and Monaghan game could be vital.
Robbie, it's probably, Mark touched it there, it's vitally important for teams to stay in Division 1, I suppose, because the quality, you look down the leagues, and I've watched some games like watched Kildare, the quality of, against Fermanagh was shocking. Meath's quality against Armagh, Cork have been a massive disappointment as well. And I suppose for the likes of Galway, Robbie, who have this, obviously glass ceiling of winning an All-Ireland, and realistically they want to win an All-Ireland, it's probably important to get those 6 or 7 games in Division 1 against higher quality opposition, isn't it really? Like, rather than drop down to 2.
Yeah, I think so. I'd have a slight worry for Galway. Just where they're at the minute, they have a lot of injuries there, and to a lot of key guys that I think they're going to need to possibly stay up in the league. I actually met Divo for lunch there recently. Mark was saying, and he literally said the same thing. That's their plan. It's all about championship. But I wouldn't have thought dropping out of Division 1 was part of the plan. So I'd imagine they'll be trying to make sure they can get these guys back on the pitch as quickly as they possibly can. But if they don't get those 6 or 7 games, obviously Connacht has improved hugely from a competitive point of view. So if you're not ready there, you'll find yourself in trouble as well. So I think they have a couple of interesting few weeks ahead of them, and if they're not right, I think they could find themselves struggling towards the end of the table.
Yeah, and is it the injuries that they'll be concerned about, Robbie? Would it be the injuries?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, and I think there's a couple of niggly ones all the time. I know there's talk of Shane. He's out at the minute. He's getting his groin looked at and stuff like that.
I was just going to say that, Robbie. Like Shane's played a lot of football. Obviously he's had the 2 seasons with yourselves back to back, and then I think the year just before you won the All-Ireland, Robbie, the year before you won the All-Ireland, I think he played the full season with Galway. They got to the final that year, isn't that right? Against Kerry. He was magnificent in that final, actually. Him and Clifford had a shootout that day. But so it's been a tough couple of years for him, I suppose, physically as well. Like, and that can take its toll, can't it?
And I think he came off that Kerry final, as I call it, and then obviously the transfer into us. Yeah. He didn't really get a break. There was obviously a lot of noise around that, which would have brought extra pressure to him, and he had a great year for us. But he got a short break. Then he was away in Australia, obviously, for a little while. But even when we were trying to prepare for the All-Ireland semi-final, he's got the Galway side of things as well. They want him down training, we want him training. So it's this non-stop circus that he's on. He doesn't get a chance to get off. Ironically, a few weeks off for the body mightn't be the worst thing for him now at this minute in time.
Yeah. Daniel, moving into Division 2, certainly Armagh and Donegal are the 2 teams that everyone is looking at. I'm looking forward to Geezer versus Jim on the sideline. I think the last time they played, I think, was it 2010? I think Geezer says Jim knows where I am. Do you remember that? I think there was an interview after the Armagh played Kildare, so there'll be no love lost there. But certainly Armagh, the word coming out of Armagh, I'm just chatting to a few Armagh people, obviously living in Newry here. You speak to a lot of Armagh people, and they were sort of saying the team has been training very, very hard, and they obviously probably targeted a really good start to the league, but maybe gamble as well, Daniel, from the point of view being that the first 2 games, looking at home to Louth, home to Meath, they were probably thinking, look, we'll have enough without the likes of Rion O'Neill here to get over the line and get 4 points on the board. But certainly they'll be relieved to have 2 from 2, Daniel.
Yeah, definitely. And like, I'm just looking at the table here as you speak. Like it is kind of Armagh, Donegal, Cavan in and around there. That's probably your 3 that are going to be battling for those 2 spots. I didn't think Armagh were wild impressive against Louth round 1. I thought they gave the impression of just doing enough. I only saw highlights, so I won't pretend to have seen the whole thing, but I thought Meath were poor again, and a lot of Robbie, you probably have more of an insight, but a huge amount of inexperience in that Meath team, I'd say. There a handful of lads, but a very, very newish team, a lot of young guys, and I thought Armagh were kind of at their ease a little bit. I like Armagh Donegal is a massive one, like it really is, and in fairness, I think Armagh should be further down the road in this Donegal team, if we're being plainly honest. Like, I mean, it's they should be more advanced. They should be in better sort of a shape, even conditioning wise. Like, Jim's only had a couple of months with Donegal. Like, Armagh have been on a path. Like, you remember the time we've talked about it, the Gub in 2017 when we went up to Crossmaglen, and one half of them were doing a fairly arduous looking session down the other half of the field. Sure, they've been on a kind of an S&C journey for a good few years. Like, so they should be further down the path, even if they haven't put a huge amount in pre-Christmas. They should be further down, and even tactically they should be further down. So that will be a big game, and I think that would be a big dent to McGeeney if Donegal turned them over, because it's another sign of brand new management coming in with the same group of players in Donegal that have been underachieving for the last, maybe not underachieving, but have been poor for the last number of years. You know, that would be a massive point in the right direction, and it'll be a cracker, I'd say. But it's two is a tricky one, and like, I know we always gone to Kildare here, but like, Jesus Christ, like, Fermanagh really gave them a lesson, and they could take something from Fermanagh, I think. And like, Fermanagh, like, I saw highlights, and they just swallowed the ego, and they just battered them physically. They ground them down. Fermanagh had a real bit of substance about them. Like, you could tell they had a real bit between their teeth, and Kildare just looked a bit flouncy. Like, they didn't really look like they wanted to be up in Enniskillen on a Saturday night, you know. So it's the Leinster teams are looking at a bit of buttering too.
Yeah, and just on that, Mark, like, the Ulster teams are going so well. You know, obviously Tyrone at the win the opening day. Obviously, I know they're beating Derry, but you're looking at the Ulster teams, Fermanagh in Division 2, Armagh. You're looking at Donegal. Cavan, you know, were very, very unlucky at the weekend as well. Possibly could have got a draw out of that game. You know, but they were very impressive in the opening day away to Kildare. And is there something to be said, Mark, as well for the quality of coaching maybe that's going on in Ulster, and maybe I don't know, is it because Ulster teams have the McKenna Cup? I know that was used as an excuse by someone, you know, that the McKenna Cup was a great preparation heading into the National League, but is the level of coaching, Mark, do you feel maybe just at a little higher ed? Like,
look, it's hard to know. I'm just thinking back to this last year. I always remember it was after about 3 weeks involved with Clare, and I've just had a basic conversation with Jimmy Malone and Keelan Sachs. They were thinking like 2 nights training and 1 night match 3 times a week for an inter-county football. I thought like that was enough, and I was actually shocked. Now, I was just listening to him, and I remember we had a meeting the following week, and I tore strips out of the Clare boys over this, and I says, I know even their Slotneil with Derry at the time. I remember Derry weren't in Shane McGuigan, Brennan Rogers, these boys were up at the Slotneil pitch with a ball, maybe for an hour, doing stuff away from it. And I remember saying, like, boys, the day of an inter-county footballer turning up twice a week with a ball in hand, and then at the weekend is gone. But down south, I don't know where is it just that, or what, like, you know, up here, and this is no disrespect to the rest, like, it's nearly a religion. Like, it's just, if you're beat, it's the worst thing in the world. And sometimes, I'm not saying this to everybody, but I know, and I had brilliant time with Clare boys. I loved them, but sometimes I just did wonder that the defeat really, really hurt them enough. Whereas, you know, up here, it's just, if you're defeated in a game, it's like a week for 2 or 3 days. Like, it really, really pisses you off. Where sometimes, I don't know if that's anything to do, but look, I don't know if it's anything to do with the coach, because if you look at Dublin, when they're on it, and you look at Kerry, well, I suppose Kerry have an Ulster coach, he'd take credit for that. Look, it's a lot of stuff, but you just know in Ulster, in them 9 counties, nothing else matters. To be fair to Andy McEntee's done a serious job in Antrim, because Antrim would have been, like, for the pick they had, struggled for a while, and he's got them all under their own hat now, the umbrellas, you want to call it. They seem to be all pushing towards the Kieran Donnelly, the same. You look at Fermanagh, let's call it student. Fermanagh, when you look at Fermanagh's team sheet, you'll not pick 5 marquee players out, but when they pull that jersey on, it's just nothing else better. It's a wee bit like Monaghan for years, punching way above their weight. So look, it's a hard one to know. You could say, me and you say, it's the coaching, but I don't look. I would say it's a load of wee different things.
Yeah, I know, like that's no stain on coaches anywhere else, but I'm just thinking, like, is the standard like, Ulster, Robbie? I suppose from a coach education point of view, like Ulster, were the leading lights for a long time, and a lot of really great men, the likes of Philip Kerr, John Morris, and these men, that were real innovators in the game when it came to coach education. And I'm just wondering as well, Robbie, the school structure in Ulster is really competitive, really strong. There's a massive emphasis. Like Derry, I was speaking to Chris Collins there recently. I don't know if you men are aware of this, but Derry now have 3 full-time game and development officers in 3 of their big schools in Derry, and I think that's a massive advantage. Like, now I know RD and Louth have done the same. They've created like a sort of a super school now, Ledge. They've got a GPO in there, they've got SSC going on. And I'm wondering, like, is that part of it as well, Robbie? Is Ulster counties, because a lot of Ulster counties have got their house in order now, and Derry underage are flying, Tyrone are always competitive, Monaghan as well. And like, I was in Monaghan last Wednesday night watching Jack Cooney delivering a session in transition play. It was a coach education run by Paul O'Connor, the games development manager, like real switched on fella. But like the volume of coaches there on a cold, wet Wednesday evening from Monaghan, Monaghan club coaches, development squad coaches, just thirsty for. And I know from my own day, Robbie, that we run in school, like, we had over 400 coaches at it there recently, Mark. Like, and there's a massive hunger for coaching and development here. And I personally feel when I'm organising the annual day in school, the volume of coaches you get from Derry, Tyrone, and Donegal is greater than anywhere. And I'm wondering, Robbie, is that definitely had an impact into how the Ulster teams are going so far?
I think so. I think you look at the league tables there, like it doesn't lie from a county perspective, but a lot of the top coaches are from Ulster. That's the reality. If you have a wish list, yeah, you won't get too far before you hit one of the Ulster coaches, no matter whether you're a club or county, and you're going to try and get a package together. That's the reality. I think they're further down the line than a lot of the other counties have been, a lot of the other provinces, and I think we are playing catch up. Like obviously Dublin perspective, Declan Darcy, I think is the top of the game because he's away now to Leinster. And obviously, they're hard boots to fill, but if you are looking to fill them, I think you generally look up north to see who's around, whether it's Conor Gilligan or Stevie Poacher or Mark Doran or whoever it is. They're the guys that are on the list that you're trying to go after, And
well,
Ledge, of course, but he's
it,
over
it
in
was
Armagh.
well, Ledger was looking to move to the north, but we couldn't get him a passport. But
Get
hey,
in person, lad.
but here, Robbie, it was a Tyrone man that started the revolution in Dublin, wasn't it? Ger O'Connor, he was the games development manager, isn't that right?
Genius. I had lucky to be in a meeting with him once. Just everything you'd expect him to be, and that's ultimately where it all started from. And as I say, I think we're all hanging off those coattails.
Yeah.
Just sorry, Steve. I think Robbie maybe know this. A fellow, it's actually Dublin, and I'm right. Now maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Dublin's head of academy coaches is by Ronan McDonald from Monaghan. Plays for Donegal, plays for Dunboyne. He plays. So look, you're just talking about also. He's the head of all development squad coaches in Dublin, because I know he had rung me last year. I went down. I done a few things for him, and I was shocked that a Monaghan man was running the whole Dublin academies.
Yeah, I think counties though are realising, Ledge. I think counties are realising. Like I was down at Cork last weekend. I was chatting to Conor Coonan at great length, and Aidan there as well, who's their high performance manager. And these counties are now starting to realise, look, we need to get our house in order from the bottom up. Because if we're going to start competing against, your Dublins and your Kerrys, and I remember speaking to Brian Carroll from Roscommon about this, the chairman, lovely man, and Brian used to say to me, like, we need 3 to 4 coming through every year, to really to stay in touch with your Mayos, your Galways, your Dublins and your Kerrys. Like, and our counties realising now, Daniel, that it is so important to have your structures right.
Yeah, and in fairness, like I won't completely go down on Leinster altogether. Like in that sense, I mean, Meath underage is healthy. I would say healthy enough. Kildare underage is healthy. Yes, as you go down through the grades, it probably, like, I know Carlo it's not fantastic. We have a structure in place, but you're probably not getting a consistent run of players. But they're behind straight away. Like you talk about the top 4 or 5. Why are the top 4 or 5? It's because they're 10 years probably plus ahead of most counties, and it's not through lack of effort or anything like that, but it's just further on the curve, and I think that gap is always going to exist, and especially in counties with more numbers, and even with not necessarily playing numbers but with the ability to pop into different kind of people's intellects. You'll have, like, I know some people working in Dublin specifically, be extremely intelligent business people who can run a business and they run your county board kind of similar to a business. And I think that's extremely important. And definitely, like, you see it in clubs across the board in Dublin, like the nurseries and the underage is huge. And the awareness now that S&C pathways and all that kind of stuff have to start from a younger age is kind of there. And I think a lot of counties, and it just happens to be a lot of Leinster counties are behind the curve on that, like, you know, and ultimately the divisions will tell you who's ahead of the curve and who's behind the curve. And you can see your Division 4 counties don't tend to change a whole lot. You might have a little bit of up and down with 3 and 4, but your top 4 or 5 will always be your top 4 or 5 because they have excellent structures in place. And obviously finances and all the rest of it play a part in that. But it's your county board, let alone your club, but your county board has to be run like a business. And the better run you are from the top down, that filters the whole way down to your under 14 development squads, you know.
Yeah, and Robbie, I would go as far as saying the likes of yourselves there, Kilmacud, like, you know, the standard of coaching and the quality that your boys are exposed to, like, is equally as good as a lot of counties, like, equally as good, if not better, you know.
Well, there probably has to be, Steve. That's the reality, you know. With the numbers we have to make sure that the coaching is the number one key thing that we're good at. You know, I think you'll find that certainly across Dublin. I don't know if Ledge back this up, but I think you're finding, you know, obviously you have games promotions officers, GDOs, whatever, going into clubs. But I think now clubs are employing directly, you know, head of athletic development, you know, even a separate role. So that's becoming a huge part of it because obviously the S&C is so important on it. And obviously we're looking at that from a younger age as well now. So I think Ballyboden are doing it, ourselves are doing it, there's probably other clubs in Dublin doing it as well. And that's another little string to the bow that we're trying to add to it along to the coaching piece. But as I say, it all started, you know, way back. It was, you know, Pádraig MacDonald, a good Monaghan man, was our, as Mark was saying, is our boy who set everything up. He's gone to Ballantyre now, but he would have left huge structures for us there that we're just following on from.
Brilliant. And I suppose, lads, going into your top of structures, your top of coaching, going into Division 3, I suppose the pacesetters are our own county, Mark Doran, you know, Kilmacud, high profile appointment. Just from your own point of view, Robbie and Daniel, I'd love, because obviously me and Mark, to be careful what we say about the hound. You mightn't think anybody's listening, but they are listening. It's quoted to me back regularly. But I just want to sort of get your opinion on coaching. Like, so you have Connor, who's a brilliant coach. You have Marty Clark who's a coach, you have Mickey Donnelly who's a coach, Declan Morgan who's a coach, and you have Kieran Mina who's a coach. Now, obviously, Kieran, I can see very clearly his fingerprints on the way we're playing at the minute. But what's your take, Daniel? Maybe start with you, and Robbie, your take, like, on having so many coaches in a setup. Can that be difficult, conflicting wise?
I just think even sometimes you can get a short-term hit from a coach coming in for a year or two, without doubt. Like we all know it. But I think the real coaching is starting with your under 14s and having, like, we're kind of going into a different conversation here, but even having your county development squads all having a rough idea of what way they're playing. And by the time they're coming into senior, that they all have the basics. We're not talking about giving them really intricacies of defending or anything like that, but have, like, what good looks like, what not so good looks like. I think that's where you're coaching then. So let's say the Mark's going down to Wicklow. If he has a group of players that have been exposed to S&C from 14, 15 years of age, have a fairly good grasp of the basic skills, have a decent idea of tactically what they're doing, he can then build on that much more. Whereas if Mark is going in and starting from the absolute bottom of the barrel with lads that have no exposure to any level of coaching, it's just been, you go out, you're naturally good football, you just go out and do your thing, and that's the end of it. That's a much bigger body of work, like, you know. So I think, and you'll notice here from being with us, like, sometimes you come into counties and you're like, holy shit, what am I going to do here in the short term that I can actually make a difference? And ultimately you go back to brass tacks, which is you set up defensively and you defend properly, because that's the immediate hit you can get. But like, you know yourself, that took us nearly 2 years to start even looking at anything offensively, from a coaching point of view. So
I don't know if you remember in year 2, I think it was after 2018, where we sort of talked about maybe developing a wee bit, and we're talking about this depth and height that everybody's doing now. I don't know if you remember the stretch call that we had. So we had a stretch call where
I gave it to you one evening and you fucking took it as your own.
Good man. But we had our halfbacks. Up around the 21. We had our wing forwards, but we were trying to get Broderick and Foley to play off both goalposts. So, you know, we're trying to stretch the game where we get a wee pop pass in or a kicking channel or a driving lane or something, you know. And we were trying that, but we didn't have enough time to fucking implement it, like, and we didn't, because we're going into a higher league. You're going in without, you know, a couple of players. So, like Robbie, I suppose as well, from a coach perspective, there is a lot of pressure on coaches. Like, take the likes of Kieran there, for example, Kieran Mina, who who is coming in. Jim McGuinness obviously was in last year. Down were playing a very different style. They weren't pressing any kickouts, probably very few kickouts. Now they're pressing a lot of kickouts, nearly all of them. They weren't committing bodies forward. They were playing on the counter, purely on the counter attack. Now they're very much fingerprinty, Derry-ish type game plan. Like that takes time, Robbie, as a coach.
Oh, a huge amount, and whether you've one coach or 10 coaches, I think that everybody needs a very specific job and a role, so they know what they're doing in that, because you can get lost in the detail in that regard. I'd be a huge fan of down football, have been for many years, so it's really encouraging to see how they're going. I think they've improved from what I would have seen them play last year. Would have seen them play Meath obviously a good few times. They seem further down the track again, so it's obviously working. The Kilmacud boys back in tow as well. It's a big plus, obviously, but yeah, from that coaching side, like if you've 10 guys or 9 guys or 7 guys and they're all saying something different, it can just splinter so quickly. So from a manager's point of view, he needs to have a real good hold on who's doing what and what their specific jobs are in trying to relate that game plan. But you're right there. If you rock into championship with having only 2 or 3 weeks work done in one particular tactic, you just can't do it. Not at that level. It's impossible.
Yeah. Mark, there was elements of Down's game there as well, like how they were defending, 2/3 of the field, 1/3 of the pitch. You come up against them in week 1 as well. You can definitely see the impact Kieran's made there from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to upset people, but I've taught a few Down players last Sunday, and make no mistake, there's one coach and one coach only. And well, like Connor is a manager, but Minahan's doing, Kieran's doing 90% of the coaching, and look, you can see it. You've already said it. Like we actually stood at the cab. I think me and you were the Down the Cab McKenna Cup game, like, and it was obvious to be seen. That's exactly what they're doing. They're like an early stage of Derry, and to be fair, look, you and me know, look, Down have serious players, and probably was a big kick in the teeth for Down not getting out of Division 3 last year, but you do see the one thing they've got really good at this year, and I would have to say, when a team do pull 14 and 15 men behind the ball, they are a lot better now at picking them apart. And look, to be fair, that with Connor and Kieran, Connor would have been good enough at that when he played for Kilmacud and when he played, and now Kieran having worked under Rory Gallagher, that was part of Derry's plan, flooding the 6 and 7 in. So look, you can see it already. They are far better at that already than what they were last year. Look, Down's in a good place, like, but they still have a big game next Sunday week. Going to Antrim will be a big game for them, because I know last year in Uri, Antrim were very disappointed they lost the game. But look, at the minute, Down, from what I've seen, are head and shoulders above anything in Division 3.
Yeah, I agree there. And Robbie, I know, putting you on the spot, I don't want to ask Mark too much about Division 3 because he's coaching there, but from your own perspective, is there any teams in 4 or 3 that you would say, have impressed you early?
I think Antrim. I think Andy, obviously a neighbour of mine here, but I think he's done a fantastic job. It's funny, Antrim are always one of those teams that I think, plenty of potential there. So he's obviously harnessed that. He has them going the one way. Got a good win over Offaly at the weekend.
Yeah.
Offaly, I think, are a little bit unlucky. I think they're probably better than the 0 points they're showing on the table. They're a young team as well. And, I'd say they're just in development. But I'd say Antrim coming out of that Westmeath Division 3, like, have they really pushed on after that great Talton year they had, and then into the championship? I'm not so sure. So I think Down, Antrim are possibly the 2 coming out of there. Division 4, Carlow boys obviously, and Laois possibly. I'm not sure how Carlow will finish out the season, but I think Laois have a bit about them. Obviously, stuff going on with the manager with Justy, see what happens there. But I think from what you're seeing, just from a performance point of view, Laois look decent enough at the minute.
Yeah, imagine staying out of work for 2 years and then your first day back getting the sack. Like, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Only in the north of Ireland. Only in the north of Ireland. But you couldn't script it. But here, Daniel, just on 4, like, I don't want to be disrespectful, like, but I do remember, like, even getting into 4, like, we come up against that Laois team with Sugrue. Sugrue was a good coach, good manager, really well organised. Antrim were decent that year as well. Big McKeever in the middle and stuff, and that there was a fair degree of good coaching and all. Like, I think a few counties have thrown the towel in, Daniel, in Division 4. I really do think a few counties. Like, I remember going to Waterford, Ledge, and they were well organised, very competitive. Do you remember? We were actually lucky to get out of there alive, literally alive.
You made comments in the newspaper during the week, and your manager, Tom Gray, I think his name was, threw a package of fairly quick, so you had him riled. Lovely.
But a few counties seem to have literally down tools, haven't they? Like, it's a weird one. Like.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last week about the turnover of players in 3 and 4, and it seems post-COVID, especially, that I think everyone got a flavour of what it might have been like without football for a while, and kind of, you're institutionalized. You can't really live without the routine of it sometimes, and then once you stop, you realize, Jesus, a point on a Tuesday is not the worst thing in the world, like, you know. So it's you definitely have seen a huge overturn of players, and like you're looking at four at the moment, like Leitrim, Carlow, Laois, top three at the moment. Like Andy Moran's probably under the pump this year, I'd say. If he doesn't do something significant, I'd say that's probably him done. And Carlow and Laois next week is local derby. Like that'll be a big one for Carlow psychologically, because there's always been this closeness where Carlow feels like the ugly sister of the relationship, like, and have had lots of opportunities to beat Laois over the years, but have never quite done it. So if they can, I think that'll be hugely psychological. Like, I mean, it'll put them in a really good place going forward with it. But no, I think in general, like, and even looking at three, I saw a clip of the Clare goal that wasn't, you know, like, that was a scandalous call altogether. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, we spoke about Clare last year, and this is just going back to the power of maybe a consistency of coaching and manager over the years. Like, since Colin Collins came in, or I think it was 2009, was it he came in or something like that?
2008.
Was 2008, yeah. Like, you look at that, what he has instilled, not just in that group of players he took on, but in football and Clare. Like, for that Clare team to be surviving with the amount of players they're missing, with such change, and to still be should be beating Westmeath away, and should be like could be 2 from 2 in Division 3, I think is massive, you know. And that's probably that's what we were talking about earlier with, like, coaching for a year or two. You can only get a limited amount of bounce, but obviously Colin McCollins has instilled something a little bit more deep than just kind of that short-term bounce. But outside of that, the other thing was Westmeath. Like, you look at the prototype we're talking about for Tailteann Cup improving teams. Like, has anything changed for Westmeath since they've won it? Probably not. I mean,
getting out of three is probably more important, you know.
Well, you could say so, yeah, for your progression. Like, I mean, like, look, let's look at Meath this year. What'll happen? Like, I mean, they're probably going to get the drop out of 2. Are they going to win Leinster? Probably not. Are they going to do anything major in Sam Maguire? Probably not, without being negative, but that's the reality. And all of a sudden, they're going to find themselves back where they started. So it's just interesting. Like, we use these second-tier competitions for development. I'm not so sure, other than a short-term kind of injection of happiness, what the development is, you know.
I suppose, Robbie, just finish for yourself and Mark there tonight. We're talking about this, and I suppose from the show's point of view, it's a lot of coaches listening, like, from the coaching group. Like, so it is great to have these discussions. But Daniel talked about that turnover of players. Something I was thinking about during the week. Like, you look at Derry, for example, Robbie, and the likes of Shane McGuigan. What age is Shane, Mark? 24?
25,
Robbie. But he's probably made, you know, the guts of, you know, 50, 60 appearances for Derry already, you know, and you're getting into Division 3 and Division 4, and Mark's maybe getting to work with a group where his main forward maybe has made 7 county appearances or 10 county appearances, you know, and that's significant, Robbie, isn't it? Surely, like, massive.
Yeah, it's huge, and that's why that gap that even the Ledge is talking about from a development point of view, like, it's very difficult to bridge it. I think you're seeing it, you know, Cork, Kildare, Meath, you know, 3 of the big powerhouses traditionally maybe are falling off the wayside a little bit, and those lads just aren't getting that experience, and unless you have it, like, how do you get it unless you actually play the games? And, you know, if you're a Lurkin O'Dell for Dublin at the minute, you're guaranteed to be getting all these top quality games, and your development improves. Not so sure for the guys further down the ranks. It's very difficult, and no matter how good your coaching staff is, it's, you know, you need that top level experience to improve.
Yeah, and would you find that, Mark, with Wicklow?
Yeah, to be fair, look, last week, and this is no disrespect to anything, I was actually talking about Dackie Downs, who had been involved with Colin, with Clare, and he's still involved with Colin. He actually rung me last Monday and says, well, what was your first taste of Division 3 like? And I said, it was actually scary, conditioning wise. Like, the conditioning, that's, like, I just remember last year, Clare playing Dublin and Cork. Like, the conditioning of the players was just, when I look at Wicklow, and to be fair to Oisin rung me a good while ago and says, look, with 10 of last year's under 20s, and he said to me, this is a 5-year job. And I said, well, look, it might be a 5-year job for you, but I'll see how we go. But he had 5-year job, and the whole big thing, like, conditioning levels are nowhere near at the lower ebb teams than they are at the top teams. And it was just, when Dackie Downs rung me, he says, what's the thing you notice in that first 10 minutes? It was like a wee bit of just a culture shock at conditioning. And look, I don't like saying this, but in my eyes, the top counties are getting stronger, and probably the weaker are getting weaker. And it probably goes into what resources are being pumped in and stuff. But look, that's just a one striking difference I noticed from last night. And I may remember, you know, this being involved with Paddy Talley for our first year. was Division 3. Then you'd Cork, Derry, and I thought it wasn't as bad. The conditioning wise, it wasn't too bad, but I definitely have noticed a big difference this year in conditioning compared to the teams down there to the teams at the top.
It's funny you say that, like, 'cause I remember Daniel 2017, winter 2017, talking to Paul Kinnerk, Robbie, and Paul had obviously played with Limerick footballers and had got out of Division 4 with Limerick footballers. So we were obviously looking, to know what is the secret. And just what Mark said there, Robbie, is interesting. Paul says, like, Stevie, we never trained. We had a group of players who just got together that winter, and we never trained as hard. Like, we trained so hard. We got ourselves super fit. And let's, to be fair, I don't know if you remember sort of the November to December time pre-2018, like when we had a real good season, like, and we were doing a lot of real good work. Like, we're playing challenge games against university sides on a Thursday night. Half the team were doing conditioning, half the team were playing a match, then with reverse roles. It was real tough stuff, like some really good quality work we get in over the winter. And I think what Mark's saying there, Robbie, is probably right. Like the level of conditioning, probably, Robbie, you'd even see it at club level with your Kilmacud, your Glens, the teams at the latter stages of the clubs, the club competitions as well. Conditioning is so important.
Absolutely. As I was touching on it earlier about that athletic development role that clubs are going after now, that's how important it is. But again, without it, I think you're you're fighting a losing battle. And can probably see, haven't seen some of the Division 3 and 4 games what Mark is talking about there. It is a gap. That's the reality. And people say 3 days a week is enough, but swimmers and athletes and everybody else are out 6 or 7 times a week, and that's the reality at Division 1 or Division 2 in the country. Like, if you're not doing that, you're going to be off the pace.
And it's collective as well. Like, you can't, it's hard, Daniel, to trust a group of young lads to do this and see, I think, like, even Carlo, for example, like a lot of those young lads there now, Daniel, that are coming through, they look really physically under-conditioned, like,
and it's not necessarily the players or the kids' fault. Like, it's culture, I mean, and I can see that with the lads in Sylvester's. Like, I mean, there's like we're far from a top team in Dublin, but like you can see there's just a culture amongst maybe your top 18, 20 players. You wouldn't have to give them a gym program. You wouldn't have to tell them. They just do it because it's part of what they've realized, what they've recognized. Well, if I don't do this, I'm going to get left behind in league games. And it's a cultural thing. I really think it is a cultural thing. And it's not big. And like, I know my own club at home in Carlow, like, if we had 5 or 6 lads who would have been doing a bit of a gym program that weren't in the county teams, that was about it. So like, if that's the attitude across your clubs, how are you going to get counties, our players ready for county? I've talked about this before, that if your players haven't got something to be preparing for, as in really strong leagues, they're not going to be conditioned for the full year, and you're not creating a ready-made county player. Like a friend, Kieran Nolan, Stevie, that like would have been in with us. He's S&C with Carlow at the moment, and he said every year, outside of about 10, he's starting from scratch with lads who've never had any real exposure to S&C. Like, how is a team meant to make any significant gains? And people mightn't necessarily like that we're talking about S&C so much, but ultimately, if you're not fast and strong, all your football in the world isn't going to make a difference. And that's the reality of the situation. And like, he's starting practically with a new base every year. Like, and the frustration, I can feel it from him. Like, he'll say, I've got lads to a really good place. He'll have them for 2 or 3 years. And then someone might be getting a run, a 21-year-old might be getting a run. He might say, no, hell with this, I'm gone. And then he has to start with a new 19-year-old again the following year. And it's a vicious cycle,
Yeah. Well, listen, lads, I think we'll finish for the night. But listen, thanks very much, Robbie. Thanks a million for coming on. Really appreciate your insight. Yeah, really appreciate your insight and knowledge, and all the very best again in 2024 with Kilmacud. And Mark, listen, the same to yourself. All the best for the rest of the National League. We'll break in the National League next week, so hopefully we'll see you again before the end of the league. Thanks very much, lads. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you later.
All right.